With grilling season in full swing, today on gen-EAT-alogy, I've got for you Salsa Verde, a classic Italian condiment that goes great on steaks, chicken, fish, and anything in between. Though you might be familiar with the name, to most Americans, the name Salsa Verde refers to the Mexican tomatillo and cilantro-based sauce, but of course, Salsa Verde just means green sauce in both Spanish and Italian. And the Italian salsa verde is one of a multitude of herb-based sauces from around the world, including the Argentinian chimichurri and the German grüne Salsa, which also just translates to green sauce. In Italy, salsa verde is considered a typical part of the traditional cuisine of Piedmont in the northern part of the country, specifically the regional variation known as Bagnet Verde. However, it has spread across the country with multiple different variations. And while the idea behind this channel is to explore ancestral dishes, and my wife Jess's family is from the southern part of Italy, this is one of our all-time favorite sauces, so I'm more than willing to stretch the definition of ancestors. In Italian cuisine, salsa verde is commonly used as a condiment for bollito misto, which is a dish of different cuts of meat boiled with vegetables. Now, by and large, boiled meat isn't a common meal in the US. However, I think salsa verde goes great on grilled or roasted meats and fish, on sandwiches, and one of my favorite ways to eat it is just on a simple piece of toast. I'll go into the history a bit more on the blog post, but some version of salsa verde has existed in Italy for thousands of years, likely brought by Roman soldiers who had served in the Middle East, although the exact origins are unknown, and the herbs in that version would have been a bit different than those found in a modern salsa verde. But written recipes for sauces that do resemble a more modern version date back to at least the 1690s, such as in Antonio Latini's Lo Scalo alla Moderna or The Modern Steward. While the ingredients for a classic salsa verde are pretty well agreed upon, the recipe has gone through an evolution, just like any other dish. In Latini's recipe from the 1690s, it's pretty much just parsley and bread soaked in vinegar, ground up in a mortar and pestle. 200 years later, in Pellegrino Artusi's quintessential Science in the Kitchen and the Art of Eating Well, salsa verde is made with anchovies, capers, garlic, olive oil, and parsley, as well as onions, lemon juice, and basil, which is not commonly found in modern recipes. So, the ingredients I'll be using are 2 bunches or 70 to 80 grams of Italian parsley, just the leaves. This amount might differ depending on where you get your parsley. 3/4 cup, or about 175 milliliters, extra virgin olive oil. 4 to 5 tablespoons of wine vinegar. Most traditional recipes use white wine vinegar, but you can also use red wine vinegar if you like. 15 to 20 grams stale bread cut into small cubes. If you have bread and it's not stale, just cut it into cubes, put it in the oven for a little bit on a low temp, and you got stale bread. 2 cloves of garlic chopped into large pieces. 2 to 3 tablespoons capers. 2 anchovy fillets. A couple of notes on the anchovy. First, I'm using anchovy fillets for the video, but honestly, I've sometimes taken to cheating in using Colatura di Alici, which is a fermented anchovy sauce, a descendant of the ancient Roman fish sauce, garum. I like it because it lasts a bit longer in the fridge than anchovy fillets, and if you're not using anchovy fillets very often, they can kind of go to waste, but it packs that same umami punch that you really like from anchovies. So if you'd like to use that, I would start off using about a half teaspoon, and I'll actually put a link into the description so you can buy it because it's probably not in your local supermarket. The second note is, unless you're vegetarian or vegan, yes, use the anchovies. I promise your salsa verde is not going to taste like fish. It gives this delightful umami bomb that is just a fantastic flavor. If you do need to substitute for the anchovies, you might go with maybe mushrooms or maybe olives might add that same kind of salty savoriness. I'm not really sure, but if you do have some recommendations for meatless umami additions, please leave them in the comments. 5 to 6 basil leaves. These are optional. Like I said earlier, you won't find basil in most modern recipes, but as the saying goes, if it's good enough for Artusi, it's good enough for Lloyd. 1/8 teaspoon chili pepper flakes. Again, not really traditional, but you will find some modern recipes with them, and I like them, so if you want to add a little heat to your salsa verde, go ahead. 1/8 teaspoon salt, and 1/4 teaspoon black pepper. These are the ingredients that I use, but honestly, they're far from the only combination. There are plenty of variations, and I'll go into detail on those a little bit more in the blog post, But once you've made the traditional salsa verde, I say experiment a little bit. Add different herbs if you'd like, some different types of vinegar, things like that. As long as it's green, it's still a salsa verde. Making the salsa verde itself is pretty straightforward. Put the stale pieces of bread in a small bowl and soak them in vinegar for a few minutes. Put the parsley, garlic, capers, anchovies, chili flakes, salt, pepper, and olive oil in the food processor. Now, in the past, people used a mezzaluna, a half-moon-shaped knife, to chop everything up real fine and then mix it with the olive oil. If you want to be real old school and do it like that, go for it, but it's the year 2023, so I'm going to use a food processor. Squeeze out the bread cubes, reserving a few just in case the salsa needs more acid, and add them to the food processor. Pulse, initially, then just let her rip, stopping periodically to scrape the sides, making sure everything gets chopped up and incorporated. Once you've got a consistency like this, taste your salsa verde. If it needs more salt, pepper, vinegar, anchovies, whatever, add a little at a time, run the food processor a little more to incorporate, and taste again and repeat until you're happy with the flavor. I will give a little warning. With the capers and anchovies being pretty salty, this is an easy dish to oversalt, so keep that in mind. If you do oversalt, try adding a little more vinegar or a little more parsley to kind of balance everything out. Like I said earlier, one of my favorite ways to enjoy salsa verde is just on a piece of toasted bread, so that's what I've got here. So, I've often seen salsa verde described as a piquant sauce, which apparently means to have a pleasantly sharp or pungent flavor, and I think that's the perfect way to describe it. You get the herbaceousness from the parsley, the vinegar is sharp, you get a nice punch of savory from the anchovies, brininess from the capers, and you definitely taste the garlic, and it's all amazing. While it's great fresh, like many sauces, salsa verde tastes even better if you let it sit in the fridge overnight and let the flavors really develop. And speaking of, your salsa verde should last in the fridge for about a week, if not a little bit more. So there you go, my recipe for Italian salsa verde. I really hope you give it a try and test it out with all different sorts of dishes. And if you like this recipe, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Gen-EAT-alogy.